Back to our program, we're discussing the ongoing Greek crisis. Joining us again to discuss this is Philippe Legrain, a former economic advisor to the President of the European Commission. He joins us from London. We have Volker Stanzel, a German diplomat and former German ambassador to China and Japan, joining us from Berlin. And we have Yannis Koutsomitis, a Greek journalist, joining us from Athens. Thanks again to all of you for being with us. Let's start in Athens this time. Yannis, Greece has asked the Russians for help, and we know that the relationship between the Russians and the European Union right now is not the best. What can Russia do for Greece?
Well, Greece, the new Greek government has pledged to forge new ties with Russia. Greek-Russian relationship has not been in a very good shape in the past years. So, on the one hand, Greece can certainly and should certainly forge a better relationship with Russia. On the other hand, there is this gas dispute between European Union and Russia regarding the pipelines. You know, there was this project, the South Stream, which was cancelled last year because there is a problem with monopolies of Gazprom. That is also a network, a distributor, and also a supplier. So there is a new project right now called Turkish Stream, and Greek Prime Minister and Russian President Mr. Putin have discussed about Greece being a major hub in this new pipeline. But all this has to come through European Union and European Commission approval. And that was also what Gazprom's CEO, Mr. Miller, said a few days ago when he visited Athens. He said, we're willing to go ahead with this great project with Greece, but it has to be approved by European Union. So on the one hand, Greece wants to be a sort of link between European Union and Russia regarding energy, and also wants to forge new ties and also maybe get a chance to bypass the embargo on the agricultural products that has hit the Greek producers quite well. But this is something that has to go step by step, and the scenario that Russia could support Greece financially in the short term, I think this is a very long shot. This is something that even the Greek government has come to realize it is not going to happen quite soon.
Ambassador Stanzel, what do you make of that? Can Greece turn to Russia? Can it bypass the structures of the European Union, go to Russia in a bilateral conversation, and how will the Europeans react to that?
Well, certainly it cannot completely bypass the European Commission because it depends on decisions taken in Brussels. But what it can do is sort of bypass in some way the agricultural sanctions. But I mean, these are of minuscule importance, both to Russia and also to Greece. So I think the European Commission in the end would tolerate that because it's a way to alleviate the situation that Greece is in. Now, as far as the Gazprom deal is concerned, I think Yannis has put it quite rightly with all its problems. More on the general plane, I would say that if Russia is ready to put money into Greece, it can only be in the shape of another loan. Now, would Russia throw its money into a bottomless pit? It wouldn't. It needs something in return. It needs some sort of security to get the money back or to get something else in return. What could that be? Can Greece help Russia politically? There's hardly anything that Greece can deliver. Economically, it's extremely difficult. So while in principle, I think if anyone, Russia or maybe even China, is welcome as an investor in Greece, Russians and Chinese will look at the viability of investments they might entertain in Greece just as much as German, American, British investors do.
Philippe, what do you make of the possibility of Russian help for Greece? Russia itself, as we know, is under pressure right now. It's facing sanctions from the European Union as well as from the United States. Is this one option that the Greeks could be looking at?
Well, let me just briefly correct what the ambassador said about the huge amount of help he said European governments have given Greece. Actually, European governments have primarily bailed out French and German banks, and by refusing to write down Greece's debts, imposed on it the worst depression that any country has suffered since the 1930s. So I think the Greeks could do without more assistance like that. Clearly, until Greece's debts are written down to a sustainable level, I don't see that Russia is going to be willing to provide large-scale assistance. If Greece's debts were written down, there wouldn't be much benefit for it turning to Russia. So no, I don't see Russia being a solution to Greece's problems. It's possible that there might be some kind of token amount of cash in return for some kind of political concessions. But frankly, I don't think that that's the way forward for Greece.
Yanis, there is one other country that Greece could turn to for help, and that is China. We know that China has already invested quite heavily in Greek ports. It has trade ties with Greece already, and Beijing has significant foreign currency reserves. Could China help the Greeks out?
Well, history tells us that also in 2010, when former Prime Minister George Papandreou visited Peking and Beijing and asked for help, the Chinese government suggested that the Greek government should turn to the IMF. And quite frankly, I don't believe that the Chinese government would bypass the IMF and the European Union partners, especially with the relationship that the Chinese government has with the German government. And but what they could do is push hard for the privatization of the Piraeus port, which is of great significance both for the Chinese government as a hub for Chinese imports in southeastern Europe, and also the Greek government is right now, I think, is willing to make this deal for Piraeus and also maybe for some other state entities that the Chinese government would be willing to invest in Greece. So quite frankly, I don't believe there could be a straight financial help, but in terms of investments, yes, I see there is great space for cooperation between the two countries.
Philip, given these realities that Greece is facing right now, do you see Greece remaining in the Eurozone and at the same time getting some kind of debt relief? I mean, do you see a grand plan yet, a strategy on the part of the Greeks to move this forward?
Well, I mean, I started off optimistic that it was rational for both sides to reach a deal, given that both countries, both the Eurozone governments and Greece wants to remain in the Euro. That said, as time has gone on, I've become more worried that a deal is not going to be possible, and that either by accident or by design, that Greece could end up outside the euro. I still think there's the possibility of a deal. I still think that if push comes to shove, Angela Merkel will not want to be blamed for pushing Greece out and potentially fracturing the euro, because there's this delusion at the moment in Europe that somehow you could push Greece out of the euro and that it would be costless. It would be in fact, it would be very costly financially, because Greece would renege on its debts and its Target 2 liabilities. Economically, because suddenly there would be a new uncertainty premium hanging over other crisis-hit countries that potentially, if push comes to shove, they could end up outside as well. And of course, politically, because we've been told that Brexit would be the end of the world as we know it for Greece. But if in fact it proved to be less bad than people fear, then you could see political contagion to places like Portugal, Spain, Italy, even France, where there are large movements that are against the euro. And last but not least, as we've been discussing, there's geopolitics. So I think that Angela Merkel is a stateswoman. She sees the bigger picture, and I hope that reason can prevail.
Ambassador Stansel, very quickly, we're running out of time. What happens next? What are the next big deadlines that are looming that we should watch for?
12th of May, when another bill is due for Greece to pay. And until then, discussions will continue. I quite agree with Philip. I started out as an optimist too. I have turned more pessimist, unfortunately. But I don't think either Eurozone governments wanting to push out Greece, nor Greece wanting to leave the euro. So there will be a compromise, even though it may unfortunately be a poor one at the end.